That's right. Welcome back, everybody, to episode 2 of the Always Pigskin Show. It is your boy, John, always Irish. Of course, I am with my partner in crime, Pigskin Pete. Thank you to everybody who commented about the first edition. Seemed like everybody liked it. As we get into this, we're going to find more things to disagree with, and this is going to continue to get more interesting. Just a reminder, all these shows are posted on both YouTube channels. Follow us both on Twitter. Type in Always Irish Pigskin Pete. You'll find us there. Pigskin, how are you, my man?
Oh, I'm amazing and fantastic. How are you doing, John?
I'm doing well. I enjoyed your live stream call-in show yesterday. That's really entertaining. You had some really good stuff, and the chat is where it's at. I put a comment in there. That chat was more entertaining than any TV that's been on COVID with no sports. It's very entertaining.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Listen, sometimes my live streams are a shit show. Which is completely welcome in my world. A shit show is fine. I'm not upset about that. But thank you for the kind words. And I encourage all of my viewers who are watching this over on the Pigskin Pete YouTube channel to go check out John. John's a really good friend of mine and a very good YouTuber. We have a lot in common, and then we also disagree on a lot of things as well.
Yeah, that's why we wanted to do this show. It's the best of both worlds. We have enough overlap that we get along, and also enough differences that it's intriguing radio or TV or YouTube, whatever the hell you want to call it. So Pigskin, here's what I wanted to do today. We spent most of last week talking primarily Notre Dame heavy stuff. And what I wanted to do this week, I know you cover some of this stuff, but I wanted you and I to cover it, and I wanted to talk some ACC specific stuff. That's obviously ultimately important to you and your team, and it's important to Notre Dame as well, since we have a minimum 5-game contract with the ACC. So I wanted to go over and ask you a few things, give a couple of my opinions on the ACC and where it's going to be at this year, and I just kind of want your feedback on that. And then at the end, I have some Clemson specific stuff, but I wanted to get an overall viewpoint of view while we're together on some ACC stuff. Does that sound good?
That sounds great. Sounds great to me.
So just as a baseline, and sorry if this is repetitive, but
can I stop you for a second?
Yeah.
We might have our first argument right now. I've got a problem with people using the word Clemson.
Clemson. What would you like me to say? Clemson?
First of all, I've never mentioned this to you before because I think it's just a part of your Midwest accent, the Chicago type of accent.
What's it supposed to be?
There is no Z in Clemson.
Clemson? How do you want me to say it? Say
it like I say it.
Say it.
Clemson.
Don't you judge my Chicago accent.
Hey, listen, John.
Don't you judge my Chicago accent, you jerk.
John, I made an entire video about this. It was actually one of the first videos I ever made on YouTube, right? And the title of the video is called "There's No Z in Clemson."
I can't tell you I've ever given this any thought. That's just how it comes out.
I know, and it's not just you. I mean, a lot of the announcers during the games. And let me tell you something. This drives like real Clemson fans, longtime Clemson fans, crazy. People that grew up in the South, and every time they say my wife, for example, anytime they say the word Clemson, she cringes. She goes, "Stop saying this. There's no Z in Clemson." She starts freaking out.
Okay, so let's talk about the Tigers.
All right.
I'm sorry. Now you got me self-conscious about my northern accent.
Just do what you do. Just do what you do. It's all right.
All right. So here's where I wanted to start. I don't think there's any argument or debate or that it's controversial to suggest that the last few years the ACC has been kind of down. However, there's been some coaching changes and some new blood and some little changes that I think make the future look a little bright. So the first thing I want to know is, do you agree with that the conference as a whole has been down the last few years? Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely.
And you got those some brand names that should never be as down as they are that have been down.
Well, the number one brand name is Florida State, right? And people argue Miami. Of course, Miami's always been down in the ACC. They've never won it since 2005 when they joined the conference, or what? 2005, 2004, somewhere around there. I don't know what it is. But yeah, so the ACC has been down. In 2016, the year that Deshaun Watson and Dabo Swinney and that crew won the national championship for the first time since 1981. They had the number one strength of schedule heading into the playoffs. So the ACC that year and the year before that, and maybe even the year after that, 2017. Well, 2017 might be when they started to decline. There was a 3 or 4 year period there, though, where the ACC was not the bottom dweller that they are now.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, Clemson's sort of a victim of circumstance.
Well, sure. I mean, like I always say, it's not your fault if you got things rolling. That's not your problem. That's on everybody else to step their game up, recruit better, develop better, win some games. Like, it's not Clemson's fault.
Don't just say Clemson. You sound better saying that.
Here's what really gets me. The worst part about all of this is when you look at these talent maps of where all the high school talent's coming out of, and then you look at Miami and Florida State, there is absolutely no reason those teams should be poor or even average, except for poor leadership.
Absolutely.
It drives me crazy looking at all that talent concentrated in that area and then looking at them be like 500 or barely above it. It's an incredible waste of resources. That's how I see that.
First of all, everything you just said there was completely factual. Here's the other part of this, though. Notre Dame plays a part in this because every single, if you're talking about Notre Dame playing 4, 5, 6 ACC foes a year, that does not count as a conference win for any team in the ACC if they beat Notre Dame, which is few and far between. And it counts as a loss against the ACC when Notre Dame beats all these teams. So that's another part of my problem with the independents. And I think we established this last week. And I think people understand where I'm coming from. Most of my viewers and your viewers know where I'm coming from. I don't have a problem with Notre Dame's independence necessarily, but I want them to join the ACC. So it's more of a selfish thing for me. At least if Clemson beats Notre Dame in 2020 in November, that's an ACC victory for the conference. If Notre Dame beats Clemson, that's not only a loss for Clemson, it's also a loss for the ACC. So we get kind of screwed on both angles.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's, an unintended consequence of them, the ACC agreeing to that contract. And again, it's got to be money. There's no other reason they would do it other than they looked at the math and figured overall it's a net positive, whatever, but it does always kill me. And now I know this is going to happen in the chat. What happened last time Notre Dame played Miami? We blew your doors off. Right. I know that's coming. And it's totally fair because it happened. But I would like to know one team's 23-3 after that point. The other's 13-13. So I want to throw that out there. There's no doubt we did not show up, got intimidated, scared, cowered, and got our doors blown off. But if you want to go there, then you got to also own the 13-13 since to our 23-3. But my overall point isn't to rip on those teams. It's just to say with proper leadership, those schools are in a great position to rise the entire stock of the ACC. And the first thing I think is going to happen is I like the Norvell hire from Memphis into Florida State.
Absolutely.
I think I got a good follower who's been on my show, and he lives in that area, and he goes to a lot of Memphis games. Lawrence Dockery's his name. And he was telling me a long time ago, this guy knows what he's doing. It's a calming presence. He knows what he's doing. You're going to get sound everything from it. And I'm really encouraged by that for Florida State. And like you said, that's a big brand name. They need to get better. There's no reason for them to be this down. So that covers Miami and Florida State. What do you think about the start Mac Brown has had recruiting at North Carolina. They're number 5 on the 247 rankings right now. What do you make of that?
Well, I was wrong about Mac Brown. First of all, I've always respected Mac Brown as a Hall of Famer. I mean, he's a Hall of Fame college football coach. Everybody knows that. I've always liked him as a person, all that. But when he came back to North Carolina, I thought this is some sort of a rebuilding thing where they want him there for 2-3 years just to change the culture, because the culture at North Carolina was going downhill. Let's be honest. And I thought he was just sort of a figurehead type deal, like Joe Paterno was. And we won't get into any Penn State controversies or anything, but you understand what I'm saying. Like Joe Paterno was at the end of his career at Penn State, football wise.
And I think maybe Bobby Bowden was a little that way too at his very end.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I get it.
But I was wrong about Mac Brown. Mac Brown is still the man. He's probably, outside of Dabo Swinney, he's my second favorite coach in the history of college football.
Wow.
Now I could put a few others that are probably right up there with him, but I'm saying just as a person I respect, as a coach I respect, and what they're doing. Mac Brown's not playing around at North Carolina. Everybody that's sleeping on North Carolina, keep sleeping on them. And if you're South Carolina or one of these other SEC teams that's probably going to meet them in a major bowl game this year, you shouldn't sleep on him neither, because he's probably going to whip your ass. But I love what Mac Brown's doing. He's stealing a lot of players from Clemson. So I mean, Clemson can't get them all, and the ones that aren't going there in the ACC are going to either Florida State or North Carolina. That's just the way it is.
Yeah. I don't think anybody could have expected that kind of start in recruiting. And I mean, it's a really good start. Like you said, he's a guy most college football people respect the hell out of.
Right.
Just seems like a good, fair dude. And so I'm really impressed with that. The other thing is, I always respect David Cutcliffe at Duke. Just in general, I just respect what he's done and how he purports himself. The issue is, it's just Duke. You know what I mean? Like, how much mileage can you get out of recruiting to Duke, no matter who you are? Not talking about basketball, obviously, but football. I respect the hell out of Cutcliffe. And I think Satterfield's going to do good things at Louisville too.
Yeah.
When they played Notre Dame week 1 last year, I think a lot of people were a little surprised at how kind of, I don't want to say sharp, but I think overall that first year with him went a lot better than a lot of people think. And I think he could do really good things at Louisville as well. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I 110. First of all, David Cutcliffe has done more with less than pretty much any coach in football.
Yeah.
And he's a good person too, I think.
Yeah.
And the other coaches you mentioned, there's 5 schools in the ACC that have had a new coach within the past year or two. So that's almost half the conference has been in a full transition between 2017 and 2019. And that's going to take time. I like Satterfield. I like Brown, obviously. I'm not sold on the Virginia Tech coach yet.
That's Pigskin. That's the next name out of my mouth.
Yeah.
I honestly expected them to gain a little bit more momentum by now with him.
I did too.
I really honestly did. He was a hot name when they got him.
And I've said, I mean, many times, I said at the beginning of last season, I'm giving Justin Fuente 1 more year, because I was on his bandwagon. I was singing his praises. I was singing the gospel of Justin Fuente all over YouTube for 3 years or 2 years, the first 2 years I was on there. And he's let me down, And so I'm off the Justin Fuente bandwagon. And of course, they're losing Bud Foster, the 30-year defensive coordinator they've had. They're losing him this year. I don't know who this guy that's coming in to replace him is going to live up to that. I don't know. I mean, sometimes it's better to make a change than not, but they're not recruiting well either. Like that's where you got to go back to. Like, it's one thing to not be doing great in a mediocre division, which is what the coastal division of the ACC is. It's a mediocre division. It's one thing for several years not to do that as a first-time head coach, but you're not recruiting great either. Like, we got to see something out of there. So the Virginia Tech has been a massive disappointment in the ACC, and they're considered to be one of the top 3 or 4 programs in the ACC, and they've been completely crapping the bed over the past few years.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I kind of thought he would have it rolling a little bit more than he does. And the other guy I respect the hell out of in the ACC is Bronco. I just do. He's another guy where I just think he's a classy guy. He runs things the right way. I've always had respect for Bronco. That's another one.
Yeah. Well, I did a number on Virginia about a year ago on YouTube, and there's literally 0 Virginia fans that watch me now. 0. I might have had a couple dozen of them. I ran them all off. But I agree. Bronco Mendenhall is a very good football coach. I took some personal shots at him that rubbed some people the wrong way. So,
okay. Well, you can't make every fan base happy all the time, right?
No,
doing this.
Listen, I can't make anybody happy. What are you talking about?
It's always something. There's always somebody you're gonna upset. But really, that's the next thing I wanted to talk about is, especially on that coastal side, it's kind of wide open. Who wants to get their recruiting together, get a nice staff going, and kind of reclaim that division? And it just seems pretty open to me. I don't know who's going to rise up there, and then you have these other waves in the ACC lately. Like, remember when Syracuse was going to be the next big thing, and they had not
according to me.
But they won a couple of those big games, and then they gained momentum. Notre Dame played them. They were ranked 12th when we played them, and it was built up as a big deal.
They were good. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Let's go through the history of the ACC. I think this is important. All right. So bear with me here.
Sure.
Because the number one knock on Clemson that I see are here, especially from SEC fans. And this is something that Notre Dame fans can completely relate to, right? The SEC, the SEC, the SEC. Why doesn't Clemson join the SEC? Why don't they get out of that cupcake conference and join the SEC? First of all, here's number one. And this might be the most important thing. All you fans of the SEC teams, whether you're Alabama or Georgia or Tennessee or South Carolina or Florida, go down the list. You don't want Clemson in the SEC. You're already yapping about how great the SEC is. You don't want another elite team in there to screw up your division or your conference title. I promise you don't. If you think that you do, you're lying to yourself. Clemson, I've been hearing for years. Clemson's only been good for 4 years. They've only been good for 5 years. They've only been good for 6 years. They've only been good for 7 years. They have no history. Clemson is 758 and 460 in their career. That's a 61.8% winning percentage over the past 100 and almost 30 years. They're the 14th winningest program in the history of college football. Now, if you're one of these teams ahead of them, you'll say, "Oh, who cares?" If you're Ohio State or Alabama or maybe even Notre Dame for that matter. Oh, that's not 14's nothing. Well, hell, there's 65 teams in the Power 5 conference. There's 131 teams in Division I football, and we're talking about 125 years. If you think that Clemson just got good 4 or 5 years ago and they don't have any historical significance, you're out of your mind. They have they're 10-6 or Dabo Swinney's 10-6 in bowls. He has 6 ACC titles. Clemson as a whole has 25 conference titles. There's not 5 teams in America that have 25 conference titles in the history of their program. 6-3 in the college football playoff, 5 playoff appearances, 25-21 in bowl games in history, 25-21. Even Ohio State and Michigan have a lower percentage and less bowl wins than Clemson does. This whole attitude about Clemson just got good, that sticks in my craw more than anything. Either they started watching college football 4 or 5 years ago, or they're under the age of 30, or they're just complete and total morons. And this whole thing about not joining the SEC, this is where I relate to Notre Dame fans a little bit about their independence, is because the reason that Clemson doesn't join the SEC is because of history and tradition. Just like Notre Dame claims that their history and tradition has to do with being independent, Clemson does the same thing as far as being in the ACC, and that is they are one of the original ACC teams. June 14th, 1953, to be exact. 67 years Clemson's been in the ACC. The original ACC teams were Clemson, Wake Forest, North Carolina State, and South Carolina. Now, since then, you've seen a lot of movement. You've seen teams leave, like South Carolina went to the SEC eventually. They've been independent too in their career a lot, more than they haven't. And then you have a lot of new teams come in from either lesser conferences or just switching over. So I sympathize with the Notre Dame tradition thing as far as that goes with Clemson. But Clemson has been one of the model college football programs for 100 years. In the top 15, at least.
Yeah, I mean, the argument here is philosophically flawed, right? Like, the one thing is, if you wanted to make that argument, it does make more sense to make it against Notre Dame, because to some extent, Notre Dame does get to make their schedules. You know, if you're in one of those conferences, you have very minimal flexibility for your out of conference. So the argument does make more sense towards Notre Dame than Clemson. Secondly, again, I always say this, if you're Clemson and you're recruiting well and winning, that is not your fault or a knock on you. That's a knock on everybody else, that they need to get their stuff together, you know? And the main thing is, I think you're right. I think half of those kids are like 17 years old. They don't see the big picture. They just remember this small window. And philosophically, it makes no sense for somebody to say the conference has been down a few years. You should just uproot and move to an entire new conference. Everything in college football is cyclical to some extent. And I just think that's a very short-sighted argument. It doesn't doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Can I say this real quick? And this is something that I've never really touched on before. The reason that Notre Dame has an affiliation with the ACC, because everybody says they should be affiliated with the Big Ten. They should be affiliated with this conference, you know, whatever other conference other than the ACC. The reason that Notre Dame is affiliated with the ACC is because of academics. There is no bad academic school in the ACC. People look at Clemson now, again, going back to the theme of people who think that Clemson's just a football factory. No, Clemson's only been a football factory for the past 8 years. 10 years at the most. Look at the history of Clemson. Clemson is a great academic school. Are they on the level of Notre Dame? No. There is 0 schools in the ACC that have a low academic standard. 0. Look. Miami is a private school. People give Miami a hard time. I know Notre Dame fans hate Miami. Miami is a really good academic school. It's a private school. Georgia Tech, North Carolina, Duke, NC State, Boston College, Pitt, Louisville, Virginia. These are all really, really elite academic schools. Now, Clemson, on the grand scheme of things, in that conference, is probably somewhere in the bottom third, but still higher than half of the SEC, or more than half of the SEC as far as academic standards go. Probably more than half of the Big Ten, probably more than half of the Big 12. I realize Michigan is a really good academic school, and Wisconsin. I know there's like 2 or 3 really good academic schools in the Big Ten, but not as far as the deepest academics. You got the Pac-12 as far as conferences go, and then Notre Dame. The Pac-12 and the ACC, they're the cream of the crop when it comes to academics.
Yeah, I can verify that the ACC lining closely up with Notre Dame academically was a big part of that decision.
Absolutely.
I can verify that. And it isn't only just the in-classroom stuff, but it's all of like the research projects and all of the stuff way bigger and more important than sports, with like medical research and scientific discovery and all this kind of stuff. Notre Dame's very advanced in those areas, and the ACC did line up very well with their mission, their goals academically, the research side of it. That all ties in.
You're
100% right.
There's no way that a school like Notre Dame, who is derives completely on tradition and academics, would align themselves with a conference that was not committed to that. No way.
Yeah, it was a major contributing factor, and I do think that's a compliment both to the ACC and Notre Dame,
Right.
that was a part of the equation. So you're spot on with that, and Notre Dame people do respect that as well, by the way, in the ACC. So that was a big deal. So when you look at this, if somebody's going to rise up, listen, nobody else in this conference is close to the recruiting machine Clemson has going right now. But who do you think is the next legitimate year in, year out threat to Clemson? Not, hey, it's an off Saturday, we're going to clip you 1 year. I'm talking about moving forward. Who do you think that's going to be? Could be in the Atlantic or overall, whatever you wanted to do. Yeah. But I just want your opinion on that.
I think in the overall in the ACC, the most immediate threat is North Carolina, as long as Mac Brown's there.
Interesting.
And I think a long term, because listen, Mac Brown's not getting any younger. I mean, we know that. Yeah. Long term, I would say Scott Satterfield in Louisville. And we'll see what happens with Florida State, because they have first of all, they have the recruiting ground, they have the infrastructure and all that. But I'm still not convinced on Florida State until I see what Mike Norvell can do. So I'd say in Clemson's division, the most immediate threat is Louisville, and outside of the division, in the other division of the ACC would be North Carolina.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted your opinion on that. And I figured, I really do, for some reason, think Norvell's going to get things turned around there. I just don't know how long it'll take and how messed up things were, that you got to get your house in order again and start building that.
It take them a few years, I think.
Yeah. There was some damage done there, and you don't dig out of that right away, you know?
Oh yeah. And Jimbo Fisher started that damage, by the way.
Well, yeah, and then he shipped, and then he left town. That's how these guys do it.
I'm not a fan of Jimbo Fisher at all. I think he's sort of a used car salesman type coach, and that's just my personal opinion. I don't know the guy. He might be a great guy. I'm not going to get into that part of it, but I will say this much about him. He was an elite coach. He was one of the top 3 coaches in college football 5 years ago. And where's he at now in the Pantheon? And there's a reason for that. He had a lot of problems with character there, and we won't even go into that. We all know what they are and who they are too. And some of them are pretty prominent players in the NFL now. But I won't blame it all on Jimbo Fisher, because my theory with Florida State was not committed. There was some sort of turning point there where they were not committed to football the way that they were before. And he saw the Clemsons and a lot of other teams in the country, but listen, Clemson was in the division, so that's the main one. Building the $80 million practice facility, football facility, and just completely transforming the way that the ACC looked from a power standpoint. And the Florida State athletic director and the academic crew there, whatever you want to call that, they weren't on board with that. They thought that there was other things, other sports that were more important than football, and Clemson was sort of running away with it. And he said, if I can't even compete with Clemson in my own division, I'm going to leave. And he did. And by the way, he got paid $80 million contract, which you can't really blame him for that. But Texas A&M is they got oil money out there. They're completely dedicated to their football program. And they have amazing facilities, the whole 9 yards. They've got every single avenue, everything Jimbo Fisher was looking for at Florida State, he's getting it at Texas A&M. The problem is he's got more competition at Texas A&M than he did at Clemson.
That's what I was going to say too. That's just a harder conference to win. I don't love the guy. I always kind of looked at him as a really good talent accumulator, you know.
Right.
But I just didn't. I don't know. I just look at the guy and I just kind of don't trust him. If that makes sense.
And there's a lot of similarities drawn between Dabo Swinney and not Tommy Bowden, but Bobby Bowden, Tommy Bowden's father. And there are Christian man, try to do things the right way, but still grow an elite powerhouse in college football. Dabo Swinney and Bobby Bowden are very, very similar people in college football. Jimbo Fisher, no, he's no Bobby Bowden. He's no Dabo Swinney. It's all about just getting the best players. We don't care about their character. He might pretend to care about their character, but there's been more people on Florida State and Texas A&M getting arrested for shit, and you just go down the line. There's really no comparison there academically. And so I think that's the reason that Florida State was kind of done with the guy to begin with. And there was a lot of friction there because Florida State, you can say what you want about Florida State. They do have standards there, morality and academic standards. And Jimbo Fisher wasn't meeting it. And then on the other side, Jimbo Fisher was wanting more money to be dumped into the program. And they weren't willing to give it to him. So it was it was a bad marriage. It was just a marriage that went bad.
Yeah. And it's not like he didn't win when he was there, so everybody got something out of it. You know,
sure, sure, absolutely.
So, they were, so that's good, but so, yeah, I never loved him personally. What do you think of Manny Diaz in Miami?
I don't know what to think about him yet.
Yeah.
Because he's only been there a year. He's only been a head coach for a year.
Yeah.
And he inherited sort of a dumpster fire too. I mean, here's the issue I run into with Miami fans when I talk to them is that they loved Mark Richt. Mark Richt was an alumni of Miami. Yeah, he had all of his success really as far as on the sidelines at Georgia, but he was a Miami guy. Miami fans always considered Mark Richt to be a Miami guy. He came in there and had a couple of good years there. You can't take that away from him. But the last year that he was there was abysmal. A lot of turmoil in the program, a lot of turmoil on the field, bad record, bad losses to bad teams. And that's ended up, what got him fired. And so the whole Manny Diaz situation, I'm just really honestly not educated enough on Manny Diaz as a coach because it's his first head coaching job to really make an honest statement about that. I will say that we got to give this guy a couple of years to see what he can do. He did fire a bunch of people, so he obviously cares. He's not just conforming to what was there and all that. So that's a good sign for Miami, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, those things take time, and when you're a program that's doing that kind of tear down rebuild, a lot of people don't have patience for it. But it does take some time, especially with recruiting, changing the culture, all that kind of stuff. But I really need, just for my sanity, I need this Coastal side to get better, okay? Because I'm sick of hearing that Notre Dame doesn't play in one of these magical big deal conference title games, and then you got 3-loss and 5-loss teams in them, and I'm supposed to act like I'm impressed that they made it to the last game when you got 5 losses and 3 losses.
Welcome to Clemson's world.
Like, dude, that's the thing that kills me. If all these conference championship games were between 1-loss teams and no-loss teams, now I'm buying in that they're a big damn deal.
Now you understand. Now you understand why I want Notre Dame to join the ACC.
Seriously, you can't throw me 3- and 4-loss teams in that big game and then act like it's a big game. It's a 4-loss team. Give me a break.
Listen, we would have seen the past 3 years Clemson and Notre Dame play in the ACC championship every single year. Every year.
Yeah, so I just need them to get better before I'll honor this argument that these title games are the end-all, be-all when they're not even compelling matchups, okay? So I need somebody over there in the Coastal to show a pulse, get it together, and challenge Clemson so that last game can actually be that meaningful, okay? Because the way I see it, you're throwing a 3-4-loss team in there, and then you got an FCS team on your schedule. Well, then there's your 12-game, 13-game Notre Dame argument. Okay?
Well, absolutely.
So that's how I see it. So somebody needs to step up there. Also, this discussion we're having right now is going to come back later to something you're going to ask me. So don't let me forget that, but you're going to bring something up later, and I'm going to go down this path again. So don't let me forget it.
All right.
So what I wanted to finish on with my ACC part of this is, do you expect your team to lose a game in 2020, or do you just think they're going to run the table?
I'd never pick Clemson to go 12-0 in the regular season.
You just think they'll get caught somewhere along the way because it's just hard to do.
Yeah, most teams lose a game. I don't care if you're Alabama or Ohio State or Notre Dame or whoever. It's extremely hard to go 12-0. Now Clemson's gone 12-0 a couple times in the past 3 or 4 years. I get that. And the fans, they start to expect that or something, right? It's extremely hard. Listen, they lost to Syracuse. They lost to Pitt. This is all in the past 5 years. Syracuse, Pitt, almost lost to they beat North Carolina by 2 points last year. And North Carolina was a vastly inferior team to Clemson talent-wise. It's just more likely to happen than not that Clemson loses the game. Until the ACC, though, can show me that they can compete with Clemson on any level, I'm still going to say they'll lose one game. So I'm going 11-1. And most likely, if they lose the game, that game will be at Notre Dame, right? Because that's the toughest game on the schedule, really. It's a road game in November in South Bend. But let's say that they don't lose to Notre Dame. Let's say they beat Notre Dame. They could still lose to any of these ACC teams they play on the road. I mean, possibly. Not likely, but possibly. So I'm saying 11-1 in the regular season is my prediction for Clemson in 2020.
Yeah, and I think that's fair because it is kind of ballsy to come in and be like, oh, nope, we're just going to run the table and be undefeated like it's easy to do, you know?
Right. Yeah.
I get that. But when you're obviously anybody can have goofy things happen and, you know, whatever, and lose a game. I just like the padding that you guys have in terms of the talent gap between you and most of the ACC and even you and Notre Dame, if that's going to be a tough game for you. So that padding allows you a margin of error there that's nice to have.
But hey, let me tell you something, because I hear this all the time, the padding there. And I'm not saying you're saying that this is unfair. But whose fault is the padding difference? Because, 10 years ago, there was no padding difference between Clemson and the rest of the ACC, or Notre Dame, especially.
Yeah, I mean, you guys got it going. I told you. It's on everybody else to start running their program right, recruit a little bit, have some consistency, build a culture. Right. You're having the same argument I have defending Notre Dame, which is, I know it's not our fault. The other teams are bad. Like in 2018, it's not our fault. These big brand name programs were down. That is not a knock on Notre Dame.
I know.
It's a knock on everybody else.
I've never heard.
It's a bad argument.
Until about 2012, probably. 2010, 11, 12, or right around there is when it started happening with me as a Clemson fan. When people started saying, oh, well, you play in the ACC. Oh, well, you play in the ACC. I never heard that shit for 20 years before that. Once they start winning, now it's about the ACC. Well, how come if the ACC sucks so bad, why wasn't Clemson winning 30 national championships in my lifetime? I need to know.
Yeah, well, it's recency bias. You know what I mean? Everybody has that window of time that they want to remember to make their point. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that's the lowest common denominator, to troll. You just pick what you want from the time frame you want and run with it. I mean, everybody does that when they're arguing, but it's incumbent on these other programs, especially the ones that have history, have tradition, have resources. It's on those teams to get it together. And it would just make the entire conference more enjoyable to watch week to week. Yeah, that's just my opinion. And that goes for you guys and Notre Dame.
I agree with that. I'd love to see Florida State be better. I'd love to see everybody in the ACC be better.
Yeah, you can't tell me college football isn't better when you guys are good, Miami's good, and Florida State's good, and Virginia Tech's in the mix.
Absolutely.
I mean, come on. Those are big brands.
I'm right there with you. I'm with that too. And let me ask you something about Notre Dame, though. I had a good question from what was his name? ND. What's his name?
I think it was Can Go ND. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay.
He's a fan of both of our channels, and he follows me on Twitter and you on Twitter. And he asked a question on Twitter, and I told him I would address it. So here we go. He wanted to know if there was a college football playoff expansion to 8 games or 10 games, 12 games, or whatever it is. How would that affect Notre Dame's independence? Because my argument and most people's argument outside of Notre Dame, and maybe even some of you guys inside of Notre Dame, is you have to go 12-0 to win. And because there's only 4 spots, and you're going to, there's 5 Power 5 conferences. You're most likely going to get the majority of the years 4 Power 5 champions is going to be your 4 playoff teams. If they expand it to 8, though, that exponentially increases the chances that Notre Dame gets in the playoffs, and it also increases the chances that Notre Dame will not have to join a conference by a groundswell of fans across the country, including Notre Dame fans that want them to join a conference.
Yeah. So this is an interesting question. I've addressed it on my show some. I in general, you look at that, if it goes to 8 and then you say, okay, there's more free spots for Notre Dame to sneak in there without being able to have a conference title. I totally get that. Here's what I don't like. And you could tell me it's because I'm a Notre Dame homer, and I'll tell you it's because of basic football logic. I'll let the audience decide which is which, and it may even be a blend of both. But the one format I don't want is 8 teams with automatic bids to the conference winners. I do not like that. What if you have a down conference and the winner has 2 or 3 losses? Why should they get in over 11-1 Notre Dame, 12-0 Notre Dame? Just because they're in a magical conference, they get in no matter how bad it is, and they are?
First of all, can I cut you off here? Because this is great. I agree with you 100%. I'm not all for the automatic bids either. But forget the automatic bids. However they do it, does this increase Notre Dame's chances to get in? Yes. That's the first thing.
Yeah, there's more seats at the table. Yeah.
And does this increase the chances that Notre Dame does not ever? I'm talking about not next year or 2022 or 2023. If they increase it to 8 games or more, you may never see Notre Dame abandon their independence for any reason.
The only way I would disagree with what you just said is if when this TV contract's up and they renegotiate the playoff format and do this, if the only thing I could see happening that would force it is that mega realignment with the conferences I keep reading about, like if they break them up or redo them or whatever.
Are you talking about the super conference idea? Four major super conferences. Okay.
That's exactly what I'm referencing. But overall, I already told you, I'm never going to come off this. Notre Dame's never going to do it unless they're told you are not able to be eligible for the playoff unless you're in full time. That is the only reason. I don't see that coming because Notre Dame provides what this is all about. Viewership, butts in seats, TV money, all that stuff is good for everybody involved. And it's not going to change. It's never going to happen. Being forced is the only way. It's the only way.
I believe you. And I think that's true. Here's the other part of it, though. Do you want to see a playoff expansion?
Kind of.
Oh, I can't even believe you're saying this.
Kind of. I'm more football's good.
I know. I'm going to interject myself as if I'm going to do my best here to put on my Notre Dame. Hell, I already put a Notre Dame green helmet on here for you.
There you go.
I'm going to put that Notre Dame green helmet right on top of this head right here, right now. And I'm going to think like a Notre Dame fan, as if that's even possible for me to do.
You might have a breakdown, but go ahead and try.
Here's what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to try to put myself in the shoes of John from Always Irish and every other Notre Dame fan out there.
All right.
If I'm you, and I value my independence, like I know you do, and most of them do, I want the playoffs to be expanded to 24 teams if it can happen.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Whatever helps us get in the playoffs.
Okay, but here's the other. There's a backside to that, which is the more you expand the playoff, the more games you have to win against good teams to win the championship. So, like, it could go too far to where I don't see Notre Dame beating 3 top 10 teams in 3 weeks in a row.
But wouldn't you rather get into the dance than not be in the dance at all? I mean, first of all, if you're not in the dance, you have no shot at all. You have 0% chance.
Well, here's the biggest factor Notre Dame people would be open to expansion. The number one biggest reason I would like that is Notre Dame's 11-1 scenario turns out to be a lot more positive for them in an expanded format than the 4-teamer. And that's 12-0. Don't worry about 12-0. 11-1 opens the window.
And 11-1 in a playoff format with 8 teams would put you in the top probably 3 or 4 seats.
Yeah, so that's really the logical biggest argument Notre Dame people should be for it is. Obviously, you got to be in it to win it, and it's exciting. Okay, I get that. But 11-1 Notre Dame goes from being probably not going to make it in a 4-teamer to you're pretty much in this scenario. So 11-1 is the big factor here. It opens up that leeway to lose a game and still have a chance that I'm not even sure exists here most years now. So that's the biggest reason.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think that the expansion is inevitable. So
it's all about money, Pete.
Yeah, it's just, and about time. So the TV contract for the current college football playoff system is, I think, 2023 or something. So we got like another 4 seasons. So we're not going to see expansion before that. All people are calling for it's not going to happen. Once that time hits, I think you will see an expansion, most likely, whether it's to 6 or 8 or 12 or 16 or whatever it is. I think it will happen at that point. And if I was a Notre Dame fan, just objectively, I would want that to happen.
Yeah, you're right. It makes you have to be less perfect to get into the tournament. And so that would be good. And think about it. Money's money. Okay. So if there's money to be made here, that's where it's going to go no matter what, with TV and everything. But think of how cool it would be if they structure that to where the first round or two turns into a home game for the higher seed. And then they go into the setup bowl games. Could you imagine that? That would be absolutely awesome, I think.
We'll have to make a show out of that. Just the structure of an expanded playoff. That's a whole nother. We could talk for an hour about that. Believe me, I've done it before.
Yeah.
I do have another question for you though.
Sure.
All right. So the 2020 schedule has Notre Dame playing how many neutral site games? 3 or 4? 3, I think.
I think it was 4 or 5. It's more than that.
All right, so let's go through them. Let's go. So you got the first of all, the mother of neutral site games in Ireland. All right, is that a kickoff game? The first game of the season? I think it
canceled.
Is.
Yeah.
Canceled.
Well, what they were going to do is, so it's let me do it. 1, 2, 3, 4. It was going to be 5 away games that are not played on an actual away campus. Okay. So here's the first part of this I don't get. I do not understand why so many home teams are willing to move away from their campus into these bigger cities to play Notre Dame. I don't get that, because
I don't get it either.
The more you get into these big metropolitan areas, the more Notre Dame people there are, and the less of a home field advantage these teams have. So I don't get it. Why do you do that? Why would you do that? Play it at home. Have all your people hammered at 7 a.m.
I'll tell you why, John, because the ACC is full. The ACC, especially the football athletic department, is full of a bunch of morons. That's why.
I do not get it. One of the coolest features of college football is those home campus, unique, dynamic environments. Why so many teams are willing to move it into these cold pro stadiums, I do not like it. But Notre Dame had 5 of them. Notre Dame, Navy, and Dublin, they're not going to be able to do it. Okay, so that game got scrapped. You got the travel, you have all that stuff. That's going to be scrapped, and it's going to be moved to Navy's actual physical campus in Annapolis for the first time in 95 years. Notre Dame Navy is going to be played on their home campus.
I like that.
I'm telling you, I like this more than the 4-hour CBS promo would have been for Ireland if we did it there. I love this. Now, it's small. They seat under 34,000 people, and that's why they never wanted to play the game there. I personally am looking way more forward to this than the 4-hour Ireland Notre Dame commercial it would have been if it was in Dublin.
Have you ever been there before? Annapolis?
Nope. Nope.
It's amazing.
Never have been.
My dad's an Annapolis grad. I've been there a couple times.
And see, that's what I want to see. All the unique stuff they're going to show on the broadcast of where they do all their trained military stuff. And
yeah,
I am way more excited for that on TV than I would be Dublin. And we did Navy in Dublin in 2012. So I've already seen what that looks like. Now, If I had tickets to go and I was planning to go to Ireland, obviously this would change. But as a TV viewer, give me that Annapolis. Let me see their vibe. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, and outside of football, honestly, Annapolis is somebody everywhere or somewhere everybody should visit because it's the smallest capital city in the country. It's a beautiful place. That's all I can say. You have to go there, football or not.
So I'm really excited about that. Now, that was really unique. Not only did they move the game, but they moved the week. This was going to be one of those kickoff classic things.
Yeah.
Then give those teams a bye week to recover from the travel from Ireland and then play the next week. So now they're just going to bump it up into the regular first week. So that's number one. And it makes sense with the travel. It's just not worth it in and out of these countries. Now, the big one, this just sucks because I wanted Notre Dame, Wisconsin at Lambeau Field. Okay. Now, the interesting thing about that one was it's at Lambeau Field, but was technically a Notre Dame home game. Then when they come to play us in Chicago at Soldier Field, that would be their home game. So that part of it makes no sense.
No, makes no sense at all.
It makes no damn sense at all to me, but that's how it's set up. There's already rumblings that they don't want it to happen at Lambeau, and it might actually just get moved into a traditional Notre Dame Stadium home game.
That's what I heard.
Yep.
Yes.
Then when it comes time to play at Soldier Field, that game would be their home game at Camp Randall. So it's just kind of goofy how it's flipped who's home and home. And I liked the Soldier Field idea. It's way easier for me to get there than it is Notre Dame or Camp Randall. So I like those games.
So when this news first came out, when the schedules first came out, I think I texted with you or tweeted at you or something about them going to that, like all the neutral site games, and I was a little bit confused about it, and quite honestly, a little bit annoyed by it. That they get to play all these games on neutral fields against ACC teams, and what you said to me was, well, the Notre Dame's giving up a bunch of home games, not only away games, but home games to play at neutral sites. Why would Notre Dame do that?
It makes no logical sense. There was a year where they like doing the Shamrock series. Okay. So they come up with the goofy uniform. Half the people love, half the people hate. Originally, this was supposed to be kind of a recruiting pitch idea to pull one home game from South Bend, move it to a neutral site, play at Jerry's World, play Yankee Stadium, play in Fenway.
That's all great, but so at the end of the day, how many?
You don't give up a home game on your campus ever. You just don't.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we agree on that. We agree on that.
So they gave up one to go play at Fenway or Yankee Stadium. I forget which, and I lost my mind. What my position is, you never give up a home game you could have on your campus, period.
Especially at a place like Notre Dame where it's hard to win. Especially.
Now, if you want, so that's my position. Then that transitions into, but if these games that we're going to be away, if they want to play them at neutral sites, that's good for Notre Dame. So I'm fine with it. I just don't know why you would want to give up your raucous home environment to play at a cold neutral site place where there's going to be more Notre Dame people in there. I do not get why people agree to it.
I don't either.
And they don't even sell them all out. That's the other thing.
I don't either.
They don't sell all those games out. So again, people get mad at Notre Dame for this. It's not our home game. Go ask these athletic directors why they're willing to do it. It's not us.
You can skip. Here's the thinking of some of these athletic directors when they're making these deals. I can tell you right now. I know what it is. Let's go to New York City and play in Yankee Stadium, which is cool, by the way. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But there's nobody in New York gives a shit about college football. I mean, very few people, unless you went to Notre Dame or Clemson or whatever school is playing them. They're not. You don't care. But you could go down to a place in the South at Clemson where the population of Clemson, South Carolina, might be 20,000. But they have an 81,000 stadium, and it's packed every week. So they just don't get it. The people that are making decisions as far as scheduling and where they schedule them, they're not really football fans. They're just whatever they are.
I just think in general, the trend to these neutral site games, if you go down that well too many times, it wears off what's kind of cool about it. I just think they're doing it way too much. But in Notre Dame's instance, I see it as a benefit. Getting off these raucous home campus environments, anytime that happens, it helps Notre Dame. I mean, you obviously have Pitt and their Heinz Field. I mean, that is what it is. And then they have Wake at Bank of America and Georgia Tech at Mercedes-Benz. So that's all those games. And they all agreed to it. And I just don't get it. I really don't get it.
Those probably would benefit Notre Dame just because of the brand and who you're playing.
Yeah.
But if you went and played Clemson at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, it wouldn't be a benefit for Notre Dame. So, I mean, it's just, I guess it's a case-by-case thing.
It is.
It's still better to play at your home stadium.
I would never leave my home campus. I don't, philosophically, I don't like it. I just don't. And I don't like it when Notre Dame does it. Now, the fans will say, John, you live in the Chicago area. It takes you 2 hours to hop on the Chicago Skyway and then you're in South Bend. But for me, living in Texas, being a Notre Dame fan, the only chance I get to see them is when they play in Jerry's World. So that caters to those people in these different. My answer to that is I don't give a crap about you. Like, I want what's best for the like, I don't care if it's convenient for you. I care about winning more games and I want to do it at home whenever possible. So I do not care about your feelings that you get to go to a home game in Texas. I'm more worried about us winning. So my feelings about your attendance, no, I don't care. Not a factor.
Yeah.
It's just not.
Good thing there's no Clemson versus Notre Dame neutral site games planned in the future. I think that the powers that be were much smarter to make sure that we played at one of the two stadiums.
Dude, just think about Notre Dame playing at Clemson again, and just think about that vibe would not be the same in one of these cold pro stadiums. No, I know you'll be able to buy beer there, but seriously, get over that.
Yeah, no, it won't be the same.
No,
it won't be the same.
No. So I just think that trend is getting a little played out in college football in general. And Notre Dame's opponents keep wanting to do it, and I don't know why. Maybe I should credit RAD a little more than I do for figuring this out, but I don't get it, and I don't like it.
Well, so what's the final story on that before we get off here? What's the final story? Because that's just something I heard is that they're thinking about doing that. Is there no official?
Here's the Navy's officially changed, and I'm hearing. So
there's no Ireland game.
No.
Okay. All right.
So Navy's completely out. That's already changed. It's a done deal. Now I'm reading that it's a very strong possibility the Lambeau Field, Wisconsin game might not happen. All of the other ones are later down the schedule, and they're going to wait until they absolutely can't anymore to decide. So the rest of those, they don't know, but I'm already hearing about the Lambeau Field situation.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. It is what it is. I mean, it's.
What about the Atlanta game? You know about that?
I have not heard anything about it yet. I did hear these NFL venues. So I guess if you want to lump them all in, they have concerns about safety and all that stuff. So, but the only two I know specifically are being talked about now is Navy's done and Lambeau.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, if you're going to put the NFL stadiums in there, you got to put Atlanta in there too. So yeah, I'll be interested to see what this is about. And I've had some serious questions about this, whether it's an advantage for Notre Dame or not. In my opinion, but you made a good argument, though. In my opinion, it's not good for Notre Dame or their fans. But like you said, Duke or whoever the team is, Duke or Georgia Tech, whoever the ACC team is that's coming to play them in New York City or anywhere else, is that really an advantage for them either? No. I mean, probably more of an advantage for Notre Dame than them. So I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, I am of the philosophy you never give up a home game you could have at your place. That's just my feeling on it.
That's the way I feel about it too.
And I just think that. And so, whatever. I mean, these guys keep doing it.
I don't even think about what it's like for the team. I think about what it's like for the fan.
And like, okay, you get to buy beer. I get it. But I like college football more than I like beer if I really had to choose, you know?
And that's the thing is, like, you got a bunch of people when you go to play in New York. Yeah, you might have some Notre Dame fans there, but you might just have some people that live in New York that are like, hey, you want to go see the football game tonight? Notre Dame's playing so-and-so, and they get drunk and go there. They don't really give a shit who wins. That's not
but you know what, though? Don't underestimate the amount of big Notre Dame people that are in New York.
Well, I'm not.
There's a lot of Notre Dame money in New York.
I'm not, but here's the difference. Anybody that comes to South Bend to watch a game, they're a fan, most likely. If you're going to watch it in Yankee Stadium, there's a pretty good chance you might be a fan or you might not be. You might just be going there just because there's an event going on.
And it's a novelty thing you haven't seen.
Right.
And it is cool to see how they position things. It's a different environment. I agree with that. You know what the coolest one I've ever been at? This has got to be like, no one could ever say this except for the people that were with me this day. I watched a Big Ten college football game in which the entire game was only played going in one direction of the field. And that would have been Illinois Northwestern at Wrigley Field. And I went down there and drank all day, and Notre Dame wasn't playing that day, so I didn't have to worry about them. They set up the stadium to run from like home to right field.
Right.
And then the refs get out there and determine the right field wall was 1 foot from the back end zone line. So they determined it wasn't safe. So everybody had to go one way no matter what the whole game. I've never seen anything like it. That's a trivia question. There's only been one time that's ever happened. It was the most bizarre thing.
I would have been pissed if I had tickets at the back end of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. That's what I was thinking too. I'm like, that sucks so bad for those guys. Like it was literally the back end zone chalk, 1 foot, and this brick wall.
Yeah.
Like, so that was just wild.
Imagine buying a ticket for however many, $500, $600 or whatever it is. And the whole time they're going away from you.
Yeah. Not only that, but think about being in left field. If you're in the left field bleachers, you got 70 yards between and where the field is anyway.
Yeah, you need binoculars for that.
Yeah. So, but it was cool, but that was just absolutely bizarre. But that's what you get when you start doing all this neutral stuff.
Yeah.
In theory, it works.
Especially at baseball stadiums.
Yeah. It was bizarre.
Yeah. All right, John, you want to close it out for us? We've been on for over an hour, and first of all, this has been an amazing show. I'm gonna go ahead and say before you close it out, this has been an amazing second episode. This has been the best one of the two, for sure.
Tough comparison there, right?
Yeah. Hey, we're batting 1 for 1.
You know what happens though? You start doing this, and then you get into more of a vibe of like, you do not stepping on each other and timing. Those are all things you got to learn, but. We had one more topic, but I don't want to rush it. I think it deserves more time. I would rather hold off on that one so we could give it some proper time because I do think it's a big deal. So you guys look forward to that because I don't want to shortchange that.
We'll save that for next week.
Yeah, that's perfect. But yeah, this time flies by. I can't believe we've been talking an hour. I feel like we've been talking for 3 minutes.
I know.
So what we're going to do is we're going to get this show done. We're going to tighten it up, wrap it up. It'll post. You guys will be able to get it. I'll be able to get it on my channel. He'll get it on his channel. Everybody enjoy it. We will be back at you next week. Pigskin Pete and always Irish. Peace out.
Pigskin Pete and always Irish. Check it out.